Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 82 of the WatchRolling podcast. Episode 82 is a watch chat with Chris, aka TJ, also known as @TJ_WatchGuy on Instagram. Chris is a retired naval flight officer, and he also appeared in episode 59, which was a military to civilian transition and the American corporate partner insights. So we discussed all that stuff there. I invite you to go check out episode 59. It was great. But here we talk with TJ about his watches and just have a nice watch chat. I thought it was pretty cool to have a naval flight officer on here, career naval flight officer. Interesting stuff. We cover a whole wide range of topics, so I invite you to check it out. As always, the pod is brought to you by the Anti-Watch Watch Club. The Anti-Watch Watch Club is a 501c3 charitable organization that utilizes a drop-style culture to provide societal, social, financial, humanitarian benefits to veterans, first responders, active duty personnel. They do it through a drop-style culture. Like I said, all kinds of cool stuff like hoodies, Nalgene bottles, sweatshirts, T-shirts, rash guards, you whole nine, you name it. They're a 501c3 charitable organizations. They don't draw a salary. None of the guys do. They do great stuff for everybody. I invite you to check them out at antiwatchclub.org. Can't give to a better organization, in my opinion. The pod is also brought to you by Mushi Watch Straps. Mushi Watch Straps is a veteran-owned watch strap and apparel accessory company. They provide all kinds of well-built and fairly priced nylon straps, canvas watch rolls, my personal favorite. Make sure you use the code VET10 for 10% off your entire order at checkout. That's Victor Echo Tango 10 for 10% off your entire order at checkout. Now, without further ado, let's get into the interview. Hey, TJ, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thanks, Jason. Doing great. Thanks for hosting, and I'm excited to talk about this stuff.
Oh yeah, it's good to have you back. I'm glad to have you back. It's been a while. It's been 30, close to 30 episodes, I think, or 29 or something like that. No, math was always difficult for me.
In a previous calendar year, but hopefully 24 is off to a good start.
Yeah. And we're here to have a wonderful watch chat, but everything's real quick. Wrist check before we start. What do you got on?
Okay. Well, we are going to talk about Grails. This is mine.
Oh, nice.
Worn it every day since getting it a few years back. So it's lived up. They say don't meet your heroes, but I kind of expected at some point the honeymoon period would wear off, but it hasn't. I think I really, maybe getting a Grail watch when you're like 46 years old means you really know what you want and you don't. But it's changed a lot of things for me, and this is it. I'm happy, and it's a wonderful feeling.
IWC?
It is. Yep. It's their Mark 18 tribute to Mark 11. It has a Salida movement, which I actually also want to talk about because I love that feature. It's not in-house, and I got it pre-owned on Chrono 24 because they stopped making them.
Oh,
and, wow. Little story about this is I went to Tailhook. I've gone several years, obviously, so basically turned into a naval aviator reunion symposium, very professional compared to what it had become in the scandal era before my time. But IWC sets up a really large booth there. It's basically almost like a containerized thing that they set up. It's huge. It looks like a little store in the middle of our display area. And this gentleman, Charles, he always comes. And so I would talk to him from year to year. And I remember asking him about, hey, when are you going to make a watch like this one again? It looks like an RAF Mark 11. And he said, well, because it's a limited edition, we're not going to really replicate that. It wouldn't be fair to the people that bought it. So then I just decided to look for used ones and found one that was super gently used and maybe not even worn. I don't know. But I mean, it costs about the same as a new one anyway.
Yeah.
But through Chrono 24, I ended up getting it.
Chrono 24, man. Yeah. All your dreams can come true on Chrono 24.
Right. That's right. I love it.
Oh, well, congratulations. Yeah, I'm wearing my wrist check. I'm wearing my Mark II NASA.
Oh, beautiful. Mark II is awesome, man. There's so many pieces of theirs I would buy right now if they had them. They're hard to get.
They are hard to get. So, it's got an ETA 2836-2 movement in it. No date. This thing is it's perfection. So just so you know, I retired in 13, and I didn't know, I wasn't into watches back then, so I didn't know. And I actually, it's back here somewhere, I got the wristwatch annual from 2013, and I was going through there. I'm like, I got to get a retirement watch, And, I ran across Mark II in there, and I was like, oh man, it's cool. Mark II's in there. And so I had the chance to meet Bill, the owner. Great guy, man. Super down to earth. I think I chatted to him for a few minutes at Wind Up at 22, but then there was a charity dive event done out here by Brock, who's a deep sea EDC, and they did it for the Heroes of the Deep Foundation, which is the repatriation of bodies from
Oh
World
yeah,
War II members, stuff like that. So they did a dive charity event. A bunch of great guys out there. Eric from Rico's Watches was out there. Tom Place was out. Tom was out there, and I met Bill, and Bill was a down to earth, super cool guy. I got to handle some of the Mark IIs, and they were great. And then I saw that one. I was like, man, if I could ever find that, that'd be a cool piece, you know? And I'm like, well, it's a long shot because it's from 2013. Well, one of the guys from AWWC was getting rid of one. And I was like, hey, and he's like, I got you. And so, we high-fived each other, and
fantastic.
we did a financial high five, and then I got the piece, and it's awesome. And especially considering it was built in, now, according to the paperwork, it was built in 2000, it was ordered in 2012, but according to the book, they were released in 13. So for it being 11 years old by the time I got it, late 10, early 11 years old, it's in great shape, and the build quality's excellent. It's just
Awesome.
a pretty snazzy little piece. And it's going to be part of this review I do later, but we're not here to talk about that. But that's my
Okay,
wrist check. But we're here to
spit
talk about,
check.
oh yeah, thanks. We're here to talk to you, TJ, about, what exactly does a naval flight officer collect? Because we've had these discussions offline. We've had them before. I think a lot of times people think they know what military people collect until they actually meet a military person and realize what they collect is slightly different than what they think maybe. But we're here to discuss your collection. So tell us about, starting off, your 3 favorite watches
Okay,
and why you
well,
like them.
my favorite, besides the grill that I have on, probably my all-time favorite watch is the Seiko Gen 2 RAF quartz chronograph from the
Mm.
probably early 80s, I think it was, and they made it through like 90. The Gen 1 or the Gen 2, but basically they're like 38 millimeter quartz, really thin, but just, they look like 100% purpose-built military analog chronograph. And I
Oh wow.
saw the first one of these. We had I was an instructor at our training squadron for the Prowler, and we had a RAF officer pretty much all the time, rotating in and out as an exchange. And one of the guys during my instructor tour, I saw his. I was like, dude, what is that watch? And it just looks super cool. And he's like, he talked to me about it. It was essentially issued, and for them, it's like something they get. I think when they graduate their navigator course, he was a backseater in
Oh,
Tornadoes, so it was just like not only an issue piece, but also like kind of coveted because it was a sign, kind of a badge of earning your wings. Um, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna find one of these. And I went to UK with him on a little exchange visit. Got to do a low-level flight in a British Hawk, and it was just phenomenal. I never got to find any of the watches, but that's kind of what started me looking online and learning about them and learning about NATO straps because it has fixed lugs. And I ended up, wearing NATO straps in my deployment in 2009, and just thinking these are the coolest thing. And at that point, they weren't really well known. Like J. Crew wasn't using them or anything like that. It was
yeah.
just kind of in the know, whatever. But to this day, like when I see that Gen 2, like I'm just in love with it. And I've been thinking about getting a vintage one, but at this point they're so old. I wouldn't wear it because I'd be so scared of damaging it. And you can see some great ones for about like $700 with new gaskets and stuff, and they run.
Yeah.
Um, one day maybe, I don't know. I mentioned this, with it, I would
Yeah.
say the original Mark 11 is just one of those, like, again, just super striking. I just like the fact that for both of those, I like the fact that they're designed by, well, specifically the RAF Mark 11, the dial was designed by some guys in the Air Force, in the Royal Air
Yeah.
Force. So, it was conceived and given birth purely for the purpose of the mission. There's no pretense or anything. I love that. And then number 3 is this guy right here, that a Citizen Navahawk.
Yeah. Those are so
It's
cool.
So these are only 40 mil. This one still works, and I wore it on a NATO in Afghanistan in 2009. It's my most rewarding deployment, but it was super neat because it's got, I don't know how well you could see it, probably not, but on the
Yeah.
top is a small subdial with UTC time,
Okay.
and then you've got a digital readout here for time, which you can put on any time zone you want. The hands will, like at a touch of a button, will resync to a time zone that you choose. So you can say, I want, analog to show this, digital to show that. Like you can just manipulate this any way you want. So our squadron used UTC as our like whole flight schedule, everything. Like, if you
Yeah.
said the meeting time is all UTC, but Afghanistan's 4.5 hours off. So all the base services, dining halls were on that. So I would basically show both times, but kept my watch primarily on UTC for flying and everything else. But if you needed a stopwatch, whatever. So the only downside is pretty weak on loom, and there's no push button light. Other than that, though, it's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah.
I love this guy forever. So
Those are pretty popular pieces. I've seen a lot of people just walking around, and at this point now, I'm pretty sure it sounds creepy, but we walk around, check out people's
oh,
wrists
we
all the
do.
time.
There's
You know what
only
I mean?
one
You're
place
like,
you can't do it is at the urinal. Other than that, you're
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's the wrong place. But I noticed the Navy Hawks or some version of that, on a lot of people's wrist.
Yeah. They
It's pretty
made bigger
cool.
ones. So they made a Skyhawk in titanium in about 2000, mid 2000s. And I went to one of my air wings had that one. Like they did an air wing buy with it where they had it engraved. And then they went up like Skyhawk AT, and then basically the watch just just grew and grew and grew in
Yeah,
size. And so for me, it was just getting too big. But and they're also somehow as they get larger, they're getting more cluttered and harder to read. So I don't know why that is, but so that I still have a lot of respect for that series, but they just don't fit me anymore.
yeah.
So it's too bad.
So you spoke about how you were that citizen in your 2009 Afghanistan mission.
Yeah.
So are there any other sentimental reason behind those other two choices, like the IWC or this? I mean, you talked a little bit about the
Yeah.
Seiko Gen 2, but like maybe expound a little bit more on the IWCs particularly, because I don't think I know IWC is like a watch enthusiast brand, right? So like a watch enthusiast is going to know IWC. I think the random civilian is not going to know. That's not into watches is going to know IWC. So, what was it that, other than, there being some input from Air Force personnel into the design of the watch, was there anything else for IWC that really drew you to it?
Well, like I guess in general for me, if like you could look at a watch purely like as a tool, like there are people that buy most people buy watches the way I buy power tools. You know, what's the price? How much voltage? What does it do? And, okay, I'll
Yeah.
buy it. I don't carry my drill around and cherish it kind of thing, right? But for watches, it's different because for me, they're like an emotional connection. I guess I
Yeah.
kind of saw, and I think that's for aviators. Back in the day, like they didn't wear their flight suits out like in the 60s and stuff. It was considered inappropriate, so they would always dress up in their uniforms or had to wear like collared shirts if they went out socially. But
Mhm.
if they had their watch, then that was the one way for them to communicate. Like look at me, I'm one of the flying guys. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like a badge, like just a little bit, and it's like fandom, right? I mean, like people wearing a Buffalo Bills jersey, they want you to know they're a Bills fan. They're passionate
Yeah.
about the Bills and they want to share it with the world. So I think watches kind of does that externally and as well as internally. When you look at it, you're just like, oh, it reminds you of something special. And, when I got my scuba cert, I got divers watches for the same reason because it was just like, it didn't matter if I was in the water. Like I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to associate with it. I wanted to connect to it. So I think there's an emotional thing there, and for me, the military watches bring it because I mean that's just been my life's work. Military aviation was
Yeah.
something I wanted to do since I was a kid, and um, I dreamed about it, and just can't still believe that I got to do it. And so, and especially now that I'm done with it, I kind of almost cling to the watches even more because
Yeah.
like I want to grab on to something that was part of it.
Yeah.
But even while I was doing it, and the IWC specifically, I think it was just as I learned the history, to me, the the state of mind of the designer of the watch matters to me, probably more so than the average watch enthusiast. Even like I care about like what was the intent, and
Yeah.
is there and did they make design decisions for what reasons? Did they make it to make it look nice, or did they do it for a purpose? And I just gravitate towards the purpose, tool, like
Yeah.
this is made for flying kind of thing. And so like and I just couldn't. There is no watch like the Mark 11 that achieves. The Mark 11 doesn't try to look stunning, right? They made the dial to say like what is really legible. And for example,
Yeah.
like they've got that the loom at 3, 6, 9, and 12, but nowhere else, and it just creates like this cross. You know what I mean? It's like really quick orientation, you know, with a
Yeah.
triangle on top. And I actually I still have a Stova Flieger, but all the indices are the same width and they're all loomed. So no kidding, at night, like you don't know which side is 12 because the even though it has the triangle, the amount of loom when it's fuzzy and you're waking up
Yeah.
is the same as the 11 next to it. So you really can't orient it. Whereas the Mark 11 is just like bam. And I just love that, that it's there's something genius about it, and the aesthetic that comes out of that, of not paying attention to the aesthetic, ends up creating something that's super cool that you couldn't replicate if you were trying to, like it's because they weren't trying to make it look cool, because
Yeah.
and I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I guess for me, like it's I'm looking at these watches on my desk right now, and they all look kind of badass. They all look like they're built for the job,
Hmm.
and none of them are caring about being fancy, but they're all, you would notice them,
Yeah.
if you saw them.
I think that's an important thing too, because you talked about how you wake up and you're tired, and the IWC, you would look at it and immediately know, like what time it is or generally what's going on, right?
Right.
And I don't think it's something that a lot of us realize that are veterans or military, right? Is that we deal with so much junk stuff that comes through the pipeline, right? Like, when we finally get something that you can tell, like, man, someone must have actually tested this thing before we used it. Like someone grabbed it, they said, oh, it's going to jack your hand up. So they made the handle soft, not softer, but whatever, right? It's user friendly. And we appreciate that so much because it eliminates like one other problem we're going to have to deal with on top of the 5 bazillion other problems we're going to
Yeah.
have to deal with during the day, right? Like
Yeah.
I know if I wear this watch, I wake up, I look at it, I know what the heck is going on, and I'm really happy that someone did that at IWC before they pumped this thing out. That's great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think too, you could think of multiple things if you think military grade or military issue, which usually it means lowest bidder and pretty low quality. But to me, it means that simplicity is a virtue,
Yeah.
because you don't, if you think about, I'm a history buff, the Germans made the Panther tank that was like the best tank in the world, but it was also mechanically really complex. So they ended up leaving them on the side of the road when something would break. They were too hard to repair. The US had the Shermans, which weren't great tanks, but you could build a ton of them and they were really reliable and you could fix them easy. And that's kind of the military in most cases focuses on that kind of equipment. It's got to be good, but it should be kept simple and rugged,
Yeah.
and so, like, I think a lot of times in watch world, we think it's a virtue to add an extra complication, and there's a certain point though with when you're in the military realm, where it's like I don't want it more. I understand why they
Yeah.
didn't have dates, and I understand why chronographs were rare and so on, because simplicity and ruggedness, and
Yeah.
just do what I need you to do and no more. To me, I really value that too. I don't
Yeah.
really want something complicated.
Well, I think you learn that too. The more and more experience you get as an enthusiast or collector, whatever you want to call yourself, you start to learn stuff about yourself. Like I know for me, like, man, I'm telling you what, like I got some homages in because I'm gonna do an article on them later, right? But I don't want to date. Like I know Sam would
Yeah.
punch me in the face for
Yes,
saying
yes,
that,
he would.
like
Yes, he
I love
would.
you, Sam. Sam, you're my second favorite person from the British Isles. And I know Sam loves dates, but like the more and more I have a date, it's like I don't want this. I want a no date. I just want a simple three-hander. I want to get up. I want to go. Um, Now I do appreciate, for aesthetic qualities like the sweep of an automatic vice, the tick 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 of a quartz. But I love quartz. You know what I mean? Because of its simplicity. And for me at this point, it's like that's just what I like. And I'll go down that hole. But then again, like I don't have the experience as a naval flight officer with some of the stuff that watch, like the watches that you're interested in, the ones that, or at least at IWC, I think simply by looking at it, it probably brings back like if I had a Zen EZM7, you know, the color scheme alone would harken back to like firefighting and all that stuff, right? Which is probably why I don't have one because I'm kind of good not fighting fires anymore.
Yeah, fair.
But you know what I'm saying? The IWC, I can see where that would be that way, maybe for you. But let's see. So we had this. For those of you people who don't know, I like to give a little look behind the glass. I have an agenda and I have like little segments. So this one would be called Watches in the Sky, right? Which I think is it's either a cool name for a band or maybe like the first single from your album you released.
Sure.
But in your role as a naval flight officer, did you observe any trends regarding like types or brands of watches worn by people in and around the aviation space?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I started flight school in 1997, so that's quite a ways back. And in those days, you saw pretty much Casio G-Shock, Timex, Iron Man, Atlantis, and then the occasional Breitling. I think in the circles I knew that I asked people like, "Hey, do you want to get a nice watch?" It would be probably a Breitling, because that's the only name I think we heard for that kind of
Yeah.
thing, and not a lot of people had those anyway. It was just something like, "Oh yeah, maybe one day you get a Breitling." I remember my first Airwing. The Airwing did an Omega X33 analog digital
Oh,
buy.
it's so cool, man. So
In
sorry.
those, yeah, in those days, you would get really good discounts. Like you'd pay about 40% MSRP if you did a squadron purchase, but
Mhm.
that the ethics folks came down on that and said, hey, that's whatever, unfair or unethical, or it shows it risks showing that the military is endorsing this company or whatever. So ultimately, we're restricted now when we do these buys to like the standard military discount rate and no better. So I think you see a few less of these types of purchases, or they look for cheaper brands. But that was that early 2000s time period, and then you'd see some Omegas and Citizens, a lot of those Skyhawks that we talked about. But now it's mostly, you still see a lot of G-Shocks, but you're mostly seeing Garmin, Suunto, super digital multifunction watches, and then you're seeing Apple watches too.
Yeah.
Now, with some of those, can get you into trouble. Either if they're smartwatches, you can't bring them into like a secure space, right? So
Yeah.
most of our aircraft, you have to have secure access for like debriefs and looking at the tapes and all that. That talking about classified stuff. So I have a feeling that on deployment, you're not going to see smartwatches. So it kind of varies, but the Garmin's were issued. I didn't get one of those. Sort of they started issuing them a little bit past my time, but one of the benefits the Garmin has is that it can read your altitude. Whereas if you're in the aircraft, it's not going to read the external. It's going to read the internal cabin pressure because it doesn't know it's not outside. But if you have a cabin pressure failure, and it's going to record essentially the parameters that your body went through, so the flight surgeons can use it to essentially treat you, or to at least debrief and sort of help isolate the failure. So these became really popular because they were able. I had a rapid decompression event, did not
Oh
have
wow.
a watch like this, but I remember telling another flight surgeon about it 2 years later or so, and he's like, "Did you happen to have a Garmin on you at the time?" Like that's what he asked me, which is a very interesting question. And I said, "No, sorry, doc, sorry to disappoint you." But I ended up doing 4.5 hours in the chamber for that one with
Oh
my
wow.
crew. Yeah, it was pretty insane. Yeah, so now you see a lot of those, and of course, you still have folks that are going to just wear just something, whatever. Like I saw a guy wearing a Hamilton. That's just basically someone saying, "Hey, I want to treat myself to something nice, and then on
Yeah.
occasion I'll fly with it." I had a friend that wore a gold Seamaster, but it was his father's, and his father had passed away, so he wore that all the time. And he wore it in Afghanistan and everything. And I think eventually he sort of realized, yeah, I probably need to not risk this watch, and so now he's
Yeah.
wearing some other things. But for a while he wore that, and that's the moment where I realized I wanted something that had heirloom level quality, and so that was in Afghanistan. And so when I hit 2,000 hours, I kind of set a goal for myself for my deployment. I'm going to hit 2,000 hours. I felt it was going to be like 3 months away in the aircraft I fly. And I was like, okay, when I hit 2,000 hours, I'm going to order one of these from the Naval Exchange online catalog. And that's exactly what I did. And so and then my son was in utero at the time. And so like I ordered this watch when he was, in the belly, and then now it's going to be his someday. And
Oh nice.
so it's pretty cool. Yeah. So that's a Speedmaster that I got.
Yeah.
So that seeing how much my friend valued the watch that his father had passed on to him before he left this world, I was like, man, that's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah.
So So I
Which
wanted to
Speedy is
do
it?
that.
Which model?
It's just a standard, He's Light version from 2008 9 manufacturer or so. So nothing special, just the Lemania movement. No
Okay.
sapphire sandwich, nothing like that.
One of my favorite things about the Speedy is real quick is that I've only really ran across two people that I think other people appreciate the Speedy, but like truly appreciate it. And it's people that go fast and people who build stuff that goes fast or deals with like extreme tolerance stuff, right? Those two people, it's like their weird intersection of like, I either fly this thing or drive this thing or whatever really fast,
Yeah,
or I'm one of the guys that people that help build this thing to go really fast. But we both like speed masters. And and I think it's funny because I don't think a lot of people realize how much of the science education you have to be a naval flight officer or a pilot. You just don't show up and you're not just like thrown into a cockpit. You learn a lot about the science in order to understand what it is you're doing, right? Like to understand how the weapon systems work and all that stuff like that. So, and I think it's just a cool intersection because it shows the level of intelligence and understanding on both sides. And that I feel like of all the pieces, that might be one of the most nuanced group of enthusiasts are the speedy, like hardcore enthusiast.
yeah, because I think there's a group of speedy folks that's like, this went to the moon, it's awesome, and to me, it's almost like, yeah, like I wish it hadn't gone to the moon because I feel like I appreciate it for but just the fact that someone designed this thing as essentially a sports chronograph for gentlemen of leisure who have time to go to the track, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it was just so damn well made that it passed all these tests and ended up working in a vacuum and all this kind of stuff. And I know, um, having done a little research on it, after I bought it, like it was very popular in Vietnam era for air crews to go and buy their own. The U.S. military has typically done a very bad job of issuing watches to personnel. They issue like very basic stuff, and then people go out and get their own. And that was one of the most chosen, I think. That and
Yeah.
the Seiko speed timer type chronographs. But yeah, so I think and to me, the the design of there's no more beautiful dial really than the Speedmaster. It's just so, I don't know, there's just something about it. It's pure
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. That's what I love. That's one thing I love about the hobby the most is, there really is beauty almost everywhere if you just choose to stop and look, you know, and even in some of the most utilitarian pieces, like some of the Zen stuff or like the mule I got, like you can tell they're just designed to do something, but in that design process, they created something truly beautiful, and
Yeah,
because
I
they're,
agree.
a lot of times they're using quality materials and the materials being quality in and of itself are beautiful, right? Like sometimes just the metal finishing that you got to brush it or you got to blast it, or the sapphire needs to have anti-reflective because you need to be able to look at it without a glare on there, right? And it's a beautiful piece of crystal or whatever, what you want to call it. And it's that's starting to like low key become my favorite thing about timepieces in general. Is just stopping for a second and like when I get especially an experience with one I haven't ever had before, is really being able to hold it and like put my glasses on and like look at it. And you're like, man, it's interesting stuff. But
Yeah, it's just slightest details.
yeah, and like especially like you as an NFO, there's stuff that you're gonna see that like maybe a tanker wouldn't see or an artillery person wouldn't see, it's just interesting things. So are there any specific characteristics or features that you notice seem to be more popular among aviation professionals when it comes to watches?
Yeah, I think multiple time zones is probably the most popular today. Um, I think if you looked at the 60s and 70s, it seemed like pilots of multi-crew aircraft wore GMT type watches or like Glycine Airmen, 24-hour with the second time
Mm-hmm.
zone. And it seemed like the single seat pilots or the navigators, basically anyone who was the primary dude responsible for navigating would probably wear a chronograph. And with the advances in navigation today, you're not, timing legs,
Yeah.
and doing dead reckoning math unless things are drastically wrong. So I think the multiple time zone is currently like the leading complication. I think that toughness. I mean, on an aircraft carrier, just taking a shower puts a watch. If you're going to wear it in the shower, that is, And I won't take a shower in the military without my watch on, because
Yeah.
you can't, your anxiety levels, whatever, you're not going to sit there going, I don't know what time it is. Like, you must
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
checking it. I don't know. So I would always wear it in the shower. And, a carrier shower is like this big, and, hitting your elbows and
Yeah.
stuff on it. I mean, I just smash the heck out of watches. Everything, every wall, everything on the ship is steel,
Yeah.
so you're going through all these things and everything. So you bang the crap out of your watch. So I
Some
would,
low intention food service attendant cuts the curtain a little too short. So when the
yeah.
ship rocks, it comes back at you and you're like, no, the
Oh yeah, if
plastic.
it touches you, uh, so
Uh,
that toughness, people always say, well, it doesn't have to have, they'll say 50 meters water resistance. Well, it's kind of low, but it's a pilot watch. Well, for a naval aviator, like, I cannot afford to eject over water and then climb into my raft, and then now I've got my radio out, and I'm gonna start doing my calls and stuff, and then I look out, my watch is flooded. Like,
yeah.
that's not. And plus, like, showering, do whatever, like military people, like, just because you're an aviator doesn't mean you're not necessarily forward deploying to some place that's really
Yeah.
rugged, right? So I think that's a mistake to assume that aviators, maybe the Air Force guys, like deploying to a nice base, whatever. But I mean, you look at a Marine pilot who's like in a,
Yeah.
or a helicopter pilot at like a forward refueling place, that's super ruggedized. So
Yeah.
I think they got to stop saying that. Um, another piece is like, electromagnetic interference
Yeah.
on carriers. So a lot of the landing signal officers on the back of the ship, the guys that are grading, and essentially, waving you off if you're unsafe on your final approach to the ship, those guys often wear quartz analog chronographs,
Yeah.
because the digital watches sometimes will get zeroed out or like screwed up by a lot of the energy. I mean, the ship's got these huge radars rotating and everything. Um, and also, it's a huge metal thing, right? So your watch can get magnetized or whatever else. So
Yeah.
it's, this is a quartz Butler J80. I
Yeah.
remember one of my pilots who was a LSO. He wore a Timex aviator chronograph with a light, because they are timing every single interval between aircraft. They're timing people, going around the pattern and stuff. So and we in the tower, it's the same thing. Like, that time matters. And I think, reading that with an analog sweeping hand is actually kind of better than just seeing numbers changing,
Yeah.
because we get used to kind of the position. I think that happens a lot in aviation, where if you're doing turns or whatever, like, you analog instruments give you your eye, it's not as precise information, right? If I need to know that the number is 12, it's easier to read 12. But if sometimes, what I don't need that, I need a trend, or I need a sort of like a rate of change. So our
Yeah.
altimeters and stuff, like, it's, they've, the funny thing is, it, from an all analog cockpit, I transitioned to increasingly digital cockpits. And what they do with that is they give you a digital um, gauge that's an analog needle. So they
Yeah.
basically created a digital instrument to look like an analog one, because they know that if I'm looking at engines, and I need to see the temperature of the two engines, right, and I see two needles like that, I'm probably okay. But if I see this, then I know something's weird. Like, it's
Yeah.
all about the eye and everything. So I find the kind of the ergonomics of all that to be really fascinating. And I know for certain events, they're like, hey, this, I know in my head, a groove length should be this many seconds, or an engine start. We would have things that were tied to time, like your oil pressure must rise within this many psi after this many seconds of light off,
Yep.
and you have this, from push to crank, your light off should take this much time. And so, like, you're just, we would all punch an 8-day digital analog clock and watch the hand go around and just sort of mark it. I don't know. There's a convenience to analog that goes
Yeah.
unappreciated, I think. But
Well, you're entirely right, because sometimes,
yeah.
like, you'll have yellow and red zones, and
Mm-hmm.
the ability to glance and see, okay, my needle's in the yellow and I'm halfway in the yellow, I'm okay, right? And you don't get that with digital numbers, right? Like, that you don't get that whole spatial awareness of saying, because a lot of times, like, you'll understand like how big a fuel tank is, right? Like, how much fuel is in my fuel tank? Okay, so if I'm at halfway, right, it's looking at a gauge that gives you an actual needle is a lot different and comforting than saying, hold on a second, I got 400 gallons and I got a 1,824 gallon tank. Like then you got to stop and think about it. When you look at the
Yeah,
gauge,
that's
you're like,
right.
no, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? And you
Yep.
can have, it helps people not freak out or help people get unnecessary stress, right? And
Yep.
then you realize you have a lot more room to either have a problem or get the problem fixed, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, the Super Hornet shows you your tanks. It's got a pretty complex fuel transfer system, but it'll show it to you, so you can kind of look down and go, oh, "Wait a minute, this is not right." Same with the RP, with the open, the angle of the turkey feathers in the back, for your engines, all that stuff. Yeah, it's kind of cool, So some things you want to see one way, some things another. But I found that when I converted to the Super Hornet, the Growler, I missed having that analog 8-day clock. We call it an analog mechanical push clock in the dash. Every airplane in the U.S. inventory had one, like all through World War II until at least the Prowler, and the Growler didn't. The Growler went to the HUD has your GMT UTC time, but I can't just hack anything. So I started wearing an analog chronograph so that I could, without looking down, or, with the Navihawk, I'd have to select the chronograph, right? I'd have to push, push,
Mm-hmm.
push, watch. Which one is it? Okay, now it's in chronograph start. Well, I just wanted something so that if we saw a fire light, I could just push it without looking and just reference it later, because there are emergency procedures, even in the Super Hornet, that say, reference the amount of time the light's been on and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's one of the first things we do when we have a caution light is start a clock. And I didn't have one in front of me anymore. So I did all my Super Hornet flying or my Growler flying with an analog chronograph, but I preferred it over something really complicated and digital, just because I just wanted to be able to hack it.
Yeah. I know space is
Yeah.
limited in a lot of equipment too, but I've always felt like, especially from firefighting, I'll never forget there was this period of time where they decided to change the plotting of fires, right? And they called the new one rapid plotting, right? And I might be dating myself, but it was because the new thing was a circle instead of a triangle. And I remember asking, how much faster is a circle than a triangle? Is it really rapid? You know what I mean? Like it was still with a grease pencil. Like I just don't understand how it's faster. Someone can show me. I think there's always room and place for taking a real hard look at the analog stuff we're going to get rid of, because I know we don't need it all, but like something like that clock, you know what I mean? Like the ability, especially with the hundreds or if not thousands of hours of muscle memory you developed by a problem clock,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Like I understand getting rid of like, the level of the coffee dispenser in the jet, but maybe keep the clock for when there's a casualty. You know what I mean? Like that might be important to do.
Yeah, I miss those 8-day clocks. I was surprised they got rid of it, because it is in, you can look, F4 Phantoms, F14, like everything back has it. And they just decided, nah, we're not going to do it. But, some
Yeah.
of the failures in the Super Hornet and Growler take out a whole bunch of your electronic stuff. But you've got a wingman, I suppose. And, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess there's new ways, I don't know. I'm sort of a child of the older period, So
Yeah.
I realized that, I'm bringing in a lot of my old habits into the aircraft that the younger guys, they're just way ahead. So a lot of the people in my generation that converted to the Growler struggled with it. I only got a small, basic qualification in it, but the guys that actually had to do a full mission qual and go on deployment in it, they said it was not fun to do that at their age.
Yeah, I bet. It's hard. I mean, you get so, you know, it's what makes you good or if not great for a long period of time, but then as time changes, it's hard to, you know, it's hard
Yep.
to adapt to certain things. So on to one of my favorite segments. One of my favorite segments is pet peeves, but I don't know if I had a
Oh
pet peeve for
boy.
this one, but I have unpopular opinion, because this is what I love. So can you share an unpopular opinion you might have about wristwatches or the watch culture in general? And if you
Okay.
have more than one, by all means, shoot them
Well,
out.
one we already touched on, and that is the quartz hate. I think is there are definitely a percentage of us that are defenders of quartz, and I think we're the right ones. And so anyway, so I'm a defender of quartz.
Yes.
Um, and it's not just that quartz is legit; it's quartz is as good in a different way to me. It's not
Yeah.
any bit inferior. Probably my biggest current unpopular opinion is I really, not only do I not value, I respect in-house movements. I do. I respect what they mean, but I don't want them. And I wish we were back in the old day, because to me, the idea of having a stock movement like ETA and now Salida, that's just essentially producing something great for everyone, and then everyone else saying, okay, we're designing dials, and we're gonna, we're the movements are counted for. There's this company that makes amazing movements. We're gonna
Mhm.
use them, because that provides, that sort of treats it more like a tool rather than a piece of
Yeah.
luxury. And I know that watches have evolved, mechanical watches have evolved into luxury. So this is me kind of wanting a little bit of that return to the tool phase, because I can, I have a Salida movement in this IWC, and I love that because I feel like I can take it more places, I can get it fixed more easily, and the day in which it's going to be too expensive to repair is a lot further away, X number of years, because just these movements are so common, and there's, they're good movements. So the only thing that you get from the in-house movement is, I think, is like exclusivity. It's just something that's more peerless, more refined, more
Yeah.
luxurious, and to me, it's like, well, that's really not what I want. So it's just,
Yeah.
it's an unpopular opinion, because I don't aspire to it. I respect it, but you know, um,
Do you think that has anything to
yeah,
do with your background as a as a professional who relied on the ability to conduct maintenance quickly, easily, and safely to do your job? Do
yeah,
you think
yeah.
part
I
of that comes
think
from that?
I think it does, yeah, because it just conditioned me, right, to say, well, if it's not easy to service, or if it spends all its time in the hangar, you
Mhm.
know, there's been sophisticated aircraft that were designed that were just really picky and needed a lot of time and attention. Well, we like aircraft that you can kick it and go, and so,
Yeah.
yeah, to me, kind of like the Sherman tank over the Panther, like, it's that argument of, I want something reliable more
Yeah.
than anything else.
And
So,
if
but
like the engine goes
yeah,
bad, you can, you may not have one just sitting in the warehouse, but there are engines readily available to procure, slap in, do the stuff, and go out and fly again, instead of saying, oh, this is yeah, I know exactly what you
yeah,
mean. And I appreciate in-house movements too, but like some of the older pieces, like if I got an ETA movement, it'd be nice to be able, like, okay, I need a new movement, cool. I'll just, you know, buy one from tons of places. It'd be nice to be able to do
yep,
that.
we're apart.
Yeah. Let's touch on the quartz one a little bit though. Like
Okay.
we've kind of danced around it, right? And
Yeah.
I'm pro quartz, right? Like if you run on the quartz platform in 2024, you're gonna get my vote. And I appreciate mechanical. I appreciate, I don't have the wherewithal to ever have a manual wind mechanical. If I did, it would have to be the most special watch in the face of the earth, and I'd probably want to go back 20 years so I could actually use it long enough to validate the price, because they're usually pretty expensive. Um, and I appreciate an automatic watch. Trust me, like as a guy who records video of watches, like nothing beats the sweep of the automatic. But for me, I don't understand the praise of an in-house, like the engineering behind an in-house movement, right? But then they just poo-poo the engineering that goes behind a quartz movement. Like I understand that engineering was
Right.
done a long time ago, but like it's still not as easy as just someone's making those quartz movements, even the ones that people dub so-called cheap or affordable. Like you still have to know how to put those together. You still have to know how to get the current to go through. Like there's so much stuff you still have to do. And if it makes if we, the community, love watch enthusiasm so much, how can we poop on something so much that brings literally the enthusiasm to so many more people? Like
Yeah, that's a good
it's
point.
crazy.
Well, they say it has no soul, and
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, it's just because it's ubiquitous, right? I mean, it's like they're cheap. You can go to Walmart or whatever. You can go to a candy machine and put probably $1 in and get a quartz watch. I mean, it will be crap, but it'll have that movement. So I think,
Yeah.
there's people talk about the craftsmanship. So I get all the sort of like the tags that go with this opinion. That
Yeah.
quartz is inferior, and it could just be a romantic notion about the watchmaker, and the gears and stuff, and it is
Yeah.
fabulous. Like the way a mechanical movement works is phenomenal, and the fact that people made them so long ago is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But you kind of wish people would take a look at the science behind a quartz, even just, I mean, the oscillating frequency of that. I mean, the fact that someone figured out, like, hey, this crystal will oscillate at this.
Yeah.
It's using coils and electromagnetic theory and stuff. It's stuff that I can understand how an escape mechanism works, but like conceptually understanding electromagnetism is really hard, And so, and at the end of the day, like the fact that you can drop a quartz watch more effectively and have it run than a mechanical, and you can, it's just going to withstand G-force or magnetism, or like it's just so much more robust.
Yeah.
I think that I feel like I've got, if I had to do a 2-watch collection, I could do it immediately. I would do this guy, and it's really accurate. Actually, it's like 4 seconds, negative 4 seconds a day. If I really couldn't deal with a 30 seconds a day gain or loss, because I kind of want to be close. But then when I want to just pick up a watch to do other stuff that I don't want to do in this, then it's going to be a Marathon Navigator. And I just ordered the steel one again. I had
nice
issue with the first one, but I love it so much. And the next one's going to be no date, the steel one.
It's the way to go.
But anything else that I'm going to do, go to the beach or work on this or power wash the patio like I did earlier tonight, it's going to be in that. And I kind of feel like I really, whenever I see a new tool watch coming out, dive watch or whatever, field watch, and they're like, oh, it's an automatic. I'm like, I want this to be automatic, but I want the tough watch to not. And I kind of don't want that line crossed, like I don't need it crossed. I do have, this is one more to show. This is JP Customs. I love this thing. This is $300.
Nice.
It's got an NH35, right? So nothing fancy, but the thing's $300, and the thing is amazing. It just, the design passion that went into this thing and the specs on it, and it's also minus 4 seconds, so it has the exact same accuracy as this IWC. It's gorgeous. I love it. It's a perfect size, 39 mil. However, when I'm taking this off to do the sporty things, the rough adventurous things, I just don't bother to take the time to put this on and set it, because it sits on the counter.
Yeah.
So this is my gym guy and all that kind of stuff. In the lifestyle I have, where I almost always wear this, the sort of complementary quartz watch is a grab and go off the counter that is rugged and tough and all that. So just that combo works. And I just kind of find that, okay, that's really all I need,
Yeah. No, I think yeah, I agree. I have a couple of quartz pieces. I have a couple of Grand Seiko quartz pieces, but that was intentional. Like I read about the 9F6 movement, and I'm like, dude, like, why wouldn't I have, and then I found one by chance, the little painting I got back here, which I'm going to do a feature on that later. But so when I found my SB GX335, no date, just tank of a watch, beautiful, but 9F quartz movement. Like, what's not to love about it, right? And it's one of those things. That's the best part, is that I pick it up, I wake up in the morning, and I was like, oh, I feel like wearing this today. It's the right time every single time. Yeah. So I just want, listen, if we don't talk about quartz, it's like in the movie Coco. If you don't talk about them, the spirit will fade away. So let's just keep talking about quartz watches so people don't forget that they're there, and they have feelings too. Watch fam, quartz watches have feelings too. But
quartz watches will probably be here after automatics have gone away. I think it's hard to say, but especially with solar quartz, it makes it even more appealing to me.
Yeah, you think the Space Force, that's all they would have, right? Just solar, eco drive it up. Yeah. Just stick their watch out by the window and
well, they don't have windows. They're in a building in the United States controlling satellites. So
true. I was thinking more about when they actually go to space eventually.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I guess we're not there yet. But
well, in between the stars, there's not much sunlight. So
I know. It's like Alex is still deployed, but we've been trying to get a Space Force person for over a year. We can't get anyone to come talk about it. And I think it's because they haven't gone in space. And I think they're a little bummed out about that. But again, open invitation. Any Space Force people want to come on, I'd be more than happy to help you. So TJ, what do you think enthusiasts often overlook or misunderstand when it comes to collecting timepieces?
I think I've been thinking a lot about this one. I think I think we sort of give a pass to watch designs that we shouldn't. We forgive things we shouldn't, or we become a little bit less demanding than we ought to be. So I think it's all about legibility for me. And so and it kind of goes to pet peeves or whatever, but it's functional. Um, so I'm talking about a couple things like when minute hands are really short, and so they don't reach the tick marks.
Yeah.
You can't really read them at a glance. If you look at all the Mecha Quartz chronographs, the minutes register is really crowded. It's really hard to read. Um, and in many cases, like I saw one, I think it was a Boulder brand quartz chronograph. The 60-minute register for counting the elapsed minutes has like a tick mark at 0, maybe 15, 30, and whatever, like every 15 minutes or 10 minutes. So you have like, it's a 60-minute scale, so it's really tiny, and then you've basically like 10 or 15 equal distant little marks all next to each other, and there's just no way that when you stop it you can go, that's 13 minutes. There's no
Yeah.
way, you can't read it. And some other watches where like the minute hand doesn't click, it sweeps continuously, as the time changes.
Mhm.
So if you look down and you have no idea,
Yeah.
whereas look at a Speedmaster, like, it's really defined. It's a 30-minute scale, it's larger, and it just goes, so you can
Yeah.
stop it and go, okay, 12 minutes 30 seconds, boom. And so, like, and there's some watches where you can put on your glasses and you can do this, and you will never tell what time it's what the elapsed time is
Yeah.
based on that scale. Like, it's not possible. Like, there's a Citizen Flieger that looks really cool. It's like, I cannot tell you what time it is in the elapsed time. So it's like, you made a chronograph, you gave it a Flieger style. It looks cool. It's watery. It has all the specs. But at the end of the day, you can't use it to measure elapsed time. So it's like, in my opinion, like, you've just created something inauthentic, and
Yeah.
and I think we like the average person going to the store and saying that looks cool, yeah, let's buy it. I understand that, but like the watch enthusiast doing a review, I would expect that we would at least point out, like, don't try to read elapsed time on this thing. But you never hear that on those watches where it's, in particular, that issue I talked about with the minute dial on the VK 63 64s. Like, they never point that out. And there was one from Nevada, Gurchen, whatever they are,
Yeah.
right, where it only has 5-minute intervals on the elapsed minute track. And it's because they based the watch on an older design that had a mechanical movement where that was the 60-second continuous seconds, but
Mhm.
now it's on the left, so now it's minutes, but they didn't change the gradations on the dial.
Mhm.
So it's 60-minute counter where there's no mark between 0 and 5. So if it's 2, 3, or 4, you just have to eyeball it.
Yeah.
So I asked on the things like, hey, which is that the dial for reading the elapsed minutes? They're like, yeah. Like no one, I was just like, am I
Yeah.
taking crazy pills? You cannot use this for the purpose intended. So I think that's what we overlook, right? Is the legibility stuff. And if and it's fine if you make like there's some art watches where like
Yeah.
Movados, right, where nobody cares. There's no, like, it's a design, it looks awesome, and it's art. But if you're saying that it's a tool watch and your advertising shows a sports car and a fighter jet, but then you can't, like, I think the reviewing community, the YouTube community, whatever, the podcast community should point that out and say, like, hey man, you can't really use this.
Yeah.
You know?
I can't believe that companies don't, drop $5,000 to talk to someone. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, there's plenty of us in the professional space that have jobs. Like, running this podcast and you being a guest are not our jobs. This
Right.
is our hobby, right? But I mean, you could hit me up on LinkedIn. I'd give you a good hourly rate, take an hour of your time and be like, that's not going to work for the intended purpose. Or I could be like, hey, I know a naval flight officer that'd be more than happy to have you pay him a couple $100 for an hour of his time. He could look at your designs and be like, if you're going to sell this as an actual chronograph, it's not going to be able to do what you're selling it for. You know what I mean? If you're just
Yeah.
selling it as a fashion watch, that's fine. And yeah, I know what you mean, because I think a lot of it's funny too, because sometimes people will complain about something about one piece, but they're okay with it on another brand. And it's like, it's the same problem. Like
Yeah.
you don't,
Yeah.
it's the same, you're not, I don't know. That's why I think a lot of it's subjective, but I hear you,
But
especially
if you
that
looked
legibility
at
thing.
have you seen the Sangin is a company that was a Marine founded it. So they made I think it's a K2, but in their advertising, they say, hey, we asked 40 or 50 aviators. And I looked at it, I was like, I can tell because this thing is freaking perfect. It has everything that I would want, times 10, and so they took the time to ask people. And I have one sort of credit is this Butler. You won't be able to see it necessarily.
Oh,
well,
yeah,
actually,
I
you
can
can. But you see the elapsed minutes, how in the 5 has a little darker bold mark for 5.
Yeah.
So I asked the guy to do that. So he had his earlier generation just had 10, 9 lines between 0 and 10. And I was struggling a little bit to read, 7 versus 8 elapsed minutes. I was like, hey, can you bold the 5? And so in the next generation, he bolded the 5.
Nice.
So I told Sam about it. And so we call them TJ lines in Sam's group because I actually helped it. And I didn't get any money for this or whatever, but this was a Butler, and Corey Butler's a great guy. And I was like, hey, this is just a little way you can improve the legibility of the elapsed dial. It was still very legible because they're spaced apart nicely, but I was like, that little extra, just that bold 5 just really helps the eye. And no kidding, I flew with this like on a low level under G and stuff, and to decide, for whatever, I'll time the low level like I used to with a watch. And I actually got a little disoriented between 2 points and went down to my watch, saw it, it's like, oh, there it is, looked at the chart, it's like, that's where boom, okay, yep, exactly where I am. So like it worked,
Nice.
and this is under, me not being the pilot, sitting in the back, bouncing around a lot because my pilot was really enjoying the G's,
Yeah.
And I was able to, and when I was able to run, which I can't anymore, I could also time my runs and not have to stop. That's hard to do, but I mean, that's what we need in a cockpit.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I know it kind of sound like a grumpy old man, which I guess I am now about this stuff, but I think sometimes it's the little things. But I think we should kind of expect some genuineness, some authenticity. And I don't mind if you just say, look, we took inspiration from this, but seriously, but when you say, oh, we're out to build a tool watch, then definitely try to get that right.
Words matter.
Yeah.
We've talked about that a lot. Words matter and how you sell stuff. And then especially if you're trying to sell it to a community, right? Like I don't know. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. We could go on.
Oh, yeah.
No, I think it's a valid point, especially with the legibility. I mean, because the legibility and the functionality directly speak to its overall ability for whoever's going to wear it to accomplish whatever mission they're doing. And heaven forbid, let's say it was some young person that hasn't been in the military very long who buys this piece because they think it's going to help them, and they go to use it when they need it during the time and it doesn't work, and it causes something bad to happen. Because like I used to use my G-Shock all the freaking time. You know what I mean? Like if you'd be in a fire and you could pull it back a little bit in a drill, whatever, you could hit the thing and see okay. You know what I mean? Because sometimes it was easier to see than your stupid SCBA gauge. You know what I mean? Like some of that thing was hard to see, but my G-Shock was never hard to see. Like, okay, cool. Because I memorized what time I went down there. Anyways, so this is the last thing we're going to talk about. Well, we got 2 more, but so I want to, in these watch chats, afford the guest an opportunity to pick whatever topic they want to talk about. And I think yours is pretty interesting. So like, we're not crunched for time or anything, but this is your topic.
I might be a little bit, but I do want to get into this one. I'm being given a continuous pass here from my bride to carry on a little bit. Hopefully she doesn't come in and interrupt, but we'll do our best. But yeah, so my topic is kind of like, I'm just kind of sensing, kind of where is this going, right? Because, and I mean watches in general, and in a way like life, because dog's starting to bark. In a previous time, like I know from other military folks in the 60s and 70s, they would buy a Rolex or an Omega or a Breitling, and it was fine. They would pay a certain percentage of their paychecks, and watches like houses now, or the relative cost compared to the average salary has skyrocketed. And we know the folks. Let me just let the dog.
Okay, cool. This is what we bring to you on the WatchRolling podcast, people. Real stuff. Dogs got to be let out.
All right, apologies.
All right, cool. Welcome back. No problem.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's all about that relative cost. A wage. I think the wages have grown X amount, and house prices have grown up X times 3. So like it's really not the same. So and I know that watches have this luxury segment now that used to be like, I know you get a really good watch, I'll pay more, I'll get higher quality. And now it's got this jump of like, I'll buy a Citizen for 500, but wait, I want something heirloom level, so that's like, okay, what do I Omega, do I go Rolex, do I go Patek? Like you can go through the roof,
Yeah.
but I wanted something luxurious and special and like heirloom level, and so I spent $2,600 on a Speedmaster back in 2009, which today would be about $7,000,
Mm-hmm.
and wages haven't gone that factor up since then. So someone like me, if today, like in that position, I would end up not buying it. And so like I've rethought, as it's really kind of like the middle class is in a weird position nowadays, where it feels like our purchasing power is lower. I thought people who retired from the military were wealthy when I was a kid, and now I look at it, it's like, well, I'm definitely not, thank God I have
Yeah.
another job. But, and then so really like as people get squeezed, out or in, I think the number of people with the in-house movement thing is taking it to another level, so that courts crisis, but now you got in-house movement crisis, and so it's like, where are people who are like, hey, I really want to buy a nice watch? And people come to me, and I'm sure they come to you, and they say like, hey, my son's graduating from the academy or
Yeah.
flight school, like, what should I get them? And I can't in good conscience steer people to Rolexes and Omegas and Breitlings at this point, for
Yeah.
$5,000 or $7,000. So um, for me, like I look now and below 1,000. Anything more than that, I feel like I'm just kind of throwing it away. I got mine kind
Yeah.
of thing, right? But this was 4,200 or so, which is my retirement. 25 years. I think I think that's worth it. But yeah, I think the whole the Swiss luxury segment of the market is sort of like running away from us, and I,
Yeah.
I think I think the number of people who can reach out and grab it is shrinking, especially when the purchasing power of the middle class is shrinking. So it's like two things are moving away from each other, and I feel like, is there a bubble coming? Um, you know, um, are the Longines and the Hamiltons at 1,000 to 2,000 with Salida movements? Like, is that suddenly going to gain traction again? Because in our community, people are very kind of dismissive of that. They only recommend those if, like, well, I'm just starting out and get a Seiko. Oh, I want something a little bit Swiss,
Yeah.
nicer. Oh, well, then go get a Hamilton and Longines. But eventually, you're going to want in-house movement. Like, when are we going to stop saying that and go like,
Yeah.
dude, you're going to be really happy with that $1,200 Longines. Go for it.
They talk out of both
You
sides of
know,
their mouths. They'll praise Longines, and it's like a
yeah.
backhanded compliment. They'll be like, "No, Longines got great heritage, blah blah blah," but I won't buy one.
Yeah.
That's what
And
they
so,
do.
yeah, and at what point do we just go, you know what though, because everyone else is moving on, right? They're
Yeah.
just getting Apple Watches and everything else, and they're hardly wanting to wear a watch at all. So we may even feel retro and cool just wearing a quartz analog watch, but it becomes rarer and rarer. So I don't know. I just got, it's an open-ended question, but it's like I really don't see where it's going. The
Yeah.
trajectory it's on doesn't seem sustainable, and I'm really wondering, like, in 50 years, where will this all be? 20 years, where will it be? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
I would add on that once you go above 1,000, I'd say once you go past like $1,500, you better be really freaking sure that you like that piece. Because I got a couple now that I'm stuck with, and I can't sell them. I can't sell them, and if I do sell them, I'm not going to get I'm not even going to break even. And they're really, really good pieces, but shame on me. I should have went out there and like touched them a little bit more. And then, you live and you learn.
Right.
But now, like, that's why I made the video before about the Pelagos FXD. I mean, I've handled it. I know I would want that. And the Explorer too. I
Yeah.
know I've handled that. I know I
Love
want that.
both of
So
those. Oh, yeah. Good
yeah, so
choice. Yeah.
I'm just gonna save up and hold on and get them. And then I'm not really buying much of other stuff. I mean, I'll pick up stuff here and there for reviews or whatever, but no, it's a good question. Where is it all headed? And, so if anyone's got any thoughts below, put them in the comment section down below. We'd love to hear them. And the last thing real quick, Chris, I always offer in these watch chats, is there a veteran program you'd like to mention or reference that people can go check out? And always I'll put the
Yeah.
links in the show notes.
Yeah, actually, so this is one where kind of on my LinkedIn page, I'm looking for help. I've been following this team called Team Brit, and they race McLarens in the European series. and Brit is British Racing Injured Troops. So that it's all about adaptive controls for injured soldiers and injured athletes who, may be paralyzed, or, they have wheelchair competitors, but they're racing against normal able-bodied teams, right? So they caught my eyes, like, this is really cool what they're doing over there in Britain. Well, they're trying to come to the United States, and there's a Resilience Racing Foundation, is a U.S. charity to help veterans who have been, injured, sort of find their passion. It's a nonprofit, and it's based in Indiana, but they take them on the track, they help them, and if they want to be like professional racing athletes, they help them develop that. I think that's
Oh,
a
wow.
really cool thing. Well, now Team Brit, in their efforts to establish operations in the U.S., is essentially working with this Resilience Racing to try to put, to create a path for these U.S. injured veterans, wounded warriors to become professionals and to race in these endurance championship series, like the 24 Hours of Daytona or Sebring, 8-hour races. So it's endurance racing. It's pretty tough. It's, Le Mans type stuff. But what I loved about it is that, that's got a technology piece. There's a lot of tech that goes into making the cars suitable for someone's needs who, can't use their legs for acceleration and brakes. And there's also like the psychological piece. So I think that to uplift somebody who's wheelchair bound, to say, hey, like, you can be champion athletes. And I've seen the guys on Team Brit on the podium, holding a trophy, and the other drivers are not in wheelchairs, like, they did it. Like, they not only entered into these series, but they're getting on the podium, and the mental health aspect of veterans and wounded veterans. I mean, that's a huge piece that resonates with me, in addition to the physical challenges that they face from their wounds. So, I'm just super excited that they want to do this, but they're looking for sponsors. So I'm looking for ideas of the types of companies that want to participate in sponsoring events like this. I'm trying to connect with like USAA or anyone that's traditionally, Gary Sinise Foundation, whatever. I just don't even know where to start. I'm not affiliated with these companies. I saw it and I was like, how can I help? I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out,
Well,
so I'm just looking for ideas,
Yeah, this is one way to do it. I mean, get it on the podcast. We're connected on LinkedIn. I'll go to your page, check it out. I know plenty of people that are, VPs for companies or owners of companies, or, and even if it's a small support or sponsorship from, a disabled veteran owned company, you know what I mean? Even if it's like $1,000 or whatever they negotiate, every little bit helps. Right. And it gets a sticker on the car, and it gets the word out there.
Yeah, and they often do either veteran-friendly companies or disabled veteran-owned companies, or some of the ones they already have involved, on the British side and starting to on the U.S. side. With I know the Marine Raider Foundation is directly involved with the Resilience Racing Foundation. So I mean, I just feel like it's just bubbling, and like I know for me, when I was struggling to find jobs and stuff, like, the lost purpose was really painful. And and that's just as someone who's not, I mean, my back limits things that I can do, right? But overall, I'm really physically lucky compared to folks whose wounds are much more severe and are wheelchair bound, have lost a limb. Like, and I just sort of like wish this for them, like, that they can fulfill dreams and like race and do cool stuff and just have this passion, so I really think it's an awesome thing they're doing. It's really neat. Yeah, definitely check it out on my page. I've got some of the pictures and stuff. I have a link to like the media thing that they've created to talk about what they want to do, and it's just really ambitious. And both the team in England and the charity they're working with in the US are both veterans in charge, established by veterans for veterans. So super cool. Yeah,
I'll check them out.
Appreciate
so Resilience Racing Foundation.
Thanks,
Chris. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's the U.S. side, and Team Brit, BRIT, is the British side.
Got it.
Racing McLaren Arturas, which are just like beautiful cars, man. Just go look at the cars; they're amazing.
Well, I'll put a link in the show notes. You got any parting shots, Chris?
No, I appreciate it. I know that I wonder sometimes if like I drone on or whatever, but like it's just stuff I care about. I love it, and I'm opinionated like every other watch lover and enthusiast, and so sometimes I'll go down rabbit holes about minute registers and stuff, but it's stuff that turns around in my head, and it's fun to share. So thanks for giving me the chance.
Oh no, thank you for coming. I for one appreciate it, because every single guest I come on, for a watch chat of some kind, I learn so much because we each have our own little things that we like. And, there's stuff that you enjoy that I haven't even learned about yet. So I take little notes. I'm like, I gotta go look that up. I gotta go look that up or check that out, So it's always, it's just fun. I think it's fun.
Yep,
And,
it is.
and it allows us to get our voice out there. Right. And allows you to, you're a collector, you have specific taste and it's in a story. That's the best part, man. We can get the stories out there for people and, people can meet other people in the watch fam and know who they are without ever actually meeting them and get an idea. You never know. You might go to a watch meetup and someone's like, oh, it's, TJ's got the IWC. You know what I mean? That's so cool when you hear people do that kind of stuff. So yeah, no. Well, again, thank you, Chris, for coming on. I appreciate it. And, look forward to the next watch chat. It won't be 30 episodes this time. I got some stuff in the works and,
Okay.
you're one of the guys I'm going to hit up about that, but,
100%. I'm ready.
I gotta wait for my boy Alex to come back from deployment. And for me, just everyone, thank you for tuning in. Like, subscribe, all that stuff if you want to. If not, leave some comments down in the show notes. Let us know, what is an unpopular opinion you have. Pick a topic, whatever you want. Put them in the show notes. I tend to reply to all of them if I can. And just like always, remember at watchrolling.com, you make the watch. The watch doesn't make you.